let me set the framework. Imagine, if you will, you are living in a world that has a lot of unrest. I know, use your imagination. There is unrest politically, there are wars raging, there are genocides happening, there's unrest within families, there are friends that aren't speaking because they're on opposite sides of political positions, and there is violence breaking out because of this unrest. I wrote that sentence earlier in the week when it felt really pertinent. And then this morning, it feels even so much more so. Which is why we're doing things like the program Reverend Karen Russo is running, Politics, Prayers, and Peace, a monthly gathering to get out of the fear mind and back into the peace mind that we say that we really believe in Science of Mind at the New Vision Center. And the world is complicated, right? It just keeps throwing us curveballs after curveballs. I feel like turning on the news is a self-defeating behavior at times. And I have to remind myself, no, I want to stay. I am in the world. I am a mystic beyond the monastery. So I must stay in the world and see these challenges as prayer homework, as has been so beautifully stated so many times from this platform and beyond. And I don't know about you, but I have reactions. I hear a headline, I have a reaction. I read a news article, I have a reaction. I hear a comment from someone, my Uber driver the other day, I have a reaction. I have a reaction. It's just me, right? Okay. Starting to think maybe it was just me. A couple of times in the last year, I've had the beautiful opportunity to speak with and to listen to a gentleman named Dr. Sean Ginwright. And he is a sociology professor who studies community organizing, inner city life. He really focuses on how to make life work better for inner city youth. He's dedicated his whole life to it. And he wrote a book called The 4 Pivots. And so we had him speak at the CSL convention because he's a CSL guy. Of course he's a guy that attends a center for spiritual living. How could you not be, right? And so I keep going back to his book because the main premise of this book is that we have a tendency culturally, and I would say within CSL as well, to pull back and look at it all from a very academic, analytic perspective. What are those people doing? What's the pattern in humanity? What's the pattern in behavior that those people are walking out? How can we fix them? How can we fix that? And I would love to say, oh, no, I'm immune to that. But then I started thinking, how often do we talk about how the creative process works? And analyze that thing like it's out there. How the law works, that thing. Academically, intellectually. And we know, don't we? Probably most of the people in this room could come right on up here and draw a chart. Right? We know the chart. Could tell me all about you plant the seed, and there's the soil, and our beliefs are in the soil, and what grows, right? We know. And then we hear something, and we have a reaction. And is that reaction academic? Is it intellectual? Can we draw a chart of it? If I drew a chart of my reaction upon hearing that there was a shooting at the Trump presidential rally and 2 people were dead, including the shooter, and Donald Trump had been shot, luckily, superficially, my chart of my reaction would look something like this. So I could get up here and I could give you a talk about the creative process. But I don't think that serves us today. I think we need to talk about what goes on the inside of ourselves and start talking about some tools that we can use, because what we know from all of that beautiful analysis that we've done, what we know is that our consciousness is feeding the consciousness, right? We're all contributing to what I call the soup of consciousness. And we can't say out there without including ourselves in it. My friend, you are a carrot. You are a carrot in the soup. And your carrotiness is influencing the flavor of the soup. If that is not enough to convince you that what I'm going to talk about is essential, you are experiencing being the carrot. And if your carrot isn't fresh and bright and shiny and healthy, you're going to experience rotten carrot life. And I don't think you want to experience rotten carrot life. So what we have to do is we have our magnifying glass lenses, right? And we've been looking at what all those other people are doing. And then we've got our binoculars. We've been looking at what all those other people are doing. It's time to put them down and to pick up a mirror. To look at what we're doing on the inside of our own selves. Dr. Sean wrote, instead of viewing the world through a thick lens, that is, as analysts of social problems, we must view it as a mirror of ourselves. This involves the practice of self-reflection and exploration of who we are as individuals and how we contribute to the world we wish to create. It's not new news, right? But it has been up-leveled in importance from a really good idea, if we want to be happy, to if we're going to save the world, we got to get going. We must. This is what you sign on when you come here. So sorry if you didn't know that. You've signed on to help change the planet. Welcome. The good news is you're not alone. Look, there's so many of us. And as many as you see here, there's more than that online. So we've got a core going. So why? Why must we look at the mirror? Well, we'll start with why Reverend Lezli says we must. And it's because it's 1/4 of your daily substantial spiritual practice. Look at the chart. See, it's right there. What is generally recommended, and I didn't make this up, I just labeled it. In most every faith tradition, we are asked to do some form of prayer, some sort of communicating with the divine, some form of meditation, receiving from the divine, some form of absorbing wisdom teachings to keep us in line, and some form of self-reflection, some form of looking within to see how our thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and behaviors are working together to impact the quality of our life and the quality of the life of the people who we impact. And in Science of Mind, we know, because we say it all the darn time, we impact everyone because our consciousness is in the consciousness. So we're impacting everyone. And the truth is, looking at the pattern of what they do doesn't actually change anything. It makes us feel smart. And I kind of like feeling smart. I think it's reasonable. Thank you, Maureen. That is a woman who knows that I came looking for a drink and didn't find a glass. Thank you. It doesn't work that way. Change always starts in here. Nobody ever changed because somebody pointed at them and said, do it differently. Rick, be different. At most, it might shift because we decide to be different and Rick notices, Leslie's showing up a little differently. It seems like it's working. Maybe I'll try it. But most essentially, we're in the soup. As we shift, the world begins to shift, person by person by person. But they are really bad, Reverend Lezli. Yeah, go ahead. We're going to let it out. We're going to take a breath all together. I know somebody might be truly, truly rotten, but focusing on that isn't going to help. It's in here, in each of one of us, where the change happens. And I know it's not easy. Dr. Sean knows it's not easy too. He said this: the truth is, reflection is tough work because it requires that we all take responsibility in creating the future we want. It's hard work. And yet, I believe that you believe, change your thinking, change your life. Change your feelings, change your life. Change how those come together to create your behavior and change your life. Take those behaviors that have changed and impact your personal relationships and change your life. Right? So, what do we get out of it? What's in it for me? I'm a marketer. What's in it for me? If I'm going to do this, what are the benefits of digging into some self-reflection? What is it? The first one is increased self-awareness. An awareness of what you think and believe at all. You know, there are people walking around that don't know what they believe. They just don't think about it. If you aren't sure how you feel about something, take it into some self-reflection. It's worth taking the time to know and understand your own thought patterns, to see how they impact your behaviors. It gives you an increased clarity on your personal identity and how you show up in the world. And that's the baseline. Until you know that, how will you know if you've shifted anything? It lets you know who you are and where you're at. Here's a key one this week. It gives you a greater sense of control, a sense of groundedness in your own space, a sense of recognizing that when you shift, your life shifts. And in a world where we may not feel safe, hear that, in a world where at times we may not feel safe, physically, emotionally, psychologically safe, feeling grounded and like you have some measure of control in your own universe is key. It's so, so, so important. It impacts your ability to make better decisions, your willingness to be vulnerable in relationship, your willingness to engage. And the third major benefit that I see is that it allows you to take a deeper alignment with your core values. Until you do step one, to understand what you think and believe, how are you going to walk out those values? We have to know who we are and what we think in order to walk in agreement with them. It's more complicated than it sounds, but it's also easier than it sounds in a paradoxical way. I do love the paradox. It's easy in that all you really need to do is look within your own heart and mind, and it's difficult in that that can be a scary place in there. Monsters might dwell within. But self-reflection is how we realize that those monsters were just shadows, just dust bunnies of consciousness. And we have a really, really powerful feather duster that we call spiritual practice. So how? How can we pick up the mirror and look within? What are practical ways we can do this? Because I've laid down a really good case for it, right? Right. But Reverend Lezli, how? So glad you asked. The first one is to engage in contemplation. Now, this can look a lot of different ways. It can look like doing a spiritual reading and sitting down and just thinking, what do I feel about that? What's coming up for me? It can sound like listening to yourself talk and noticing what you say to yourself and choosing to shift it if necessary. It can involve having a chitty chat with one of your friends, one of your like-minded friends, about what comes up after this message, what came up after watching the news, what came up after you had a bad dream, and just talking it out and listening to what you say. It's the key part. It's not just talking. It's listening to what you say and then taking that information into spiritual practice, into change-making behavior. That's contemplation. The second one is journaling. Different things come out of us when we write it down or talk it out in a journaling approach because different parts of our brains are engaged. I know those of you who have 14 empty journals because you buy a new one every time I say this and then you don't write in it are going, oh no, she did it again. I'm going to invite you to play with journaling differently. Do it the way you'll do it. If you'll talk into your phone recorder, do it that way. If you'll do bullet points instead of sentences, do that. If you'll draw your thoughts instead of write them, do that. Nobody's going to come look at your journal to tell you you did it wrong. The only wrong way to do it is to not do it. If you journal better in lists, fine, make lists. If you journal better writing little shapes, remember that from like junior high? I think everybody went through a junior high version of writing their notes and like the shape of a flower. Do that. But send me a picture of that one because I'm going to want to see it. Because that sounds cute. Journaling gets to a part of our brain that is different than what we would speak aloud. And so different memories, different thoughts, different consciousnesses stored there. And you deserve to have it all explored. You deserve to have your entire wholeness be open to this process. And the third one is engaging in a practitioner session. So you knew I was going to get that in there because it's Prac Sunday. In a practitioner session, you sit down with the practitioner of your choice for an extended period of time, and you bring something to them that you are struggling with. And you talk it out. And they are right there with you to ask questions and kind of, I call it tugging the thread, to just keep engaging you a little bit deeper, asking really complicated questions like, how does that feel? Why do you think that? What is underneath that for you? Where do you suppose you learned that? How does it feel in your body? You know, the kinds of questions that you probably wouldn't ask yourself. And they're there if you find that you're all the way over here in consciousness to go, hey, do you remember about the principle of oneness? Hey, you know about wholeness, right? And help pull us in just a little bit closer to our own truth. And then they hold us in the most delicious prayer. It is such a gift to you to give yourself time with a practitioner that resonates with you. I hope you really hear how earnest I am in this. I got lucky. And I think I've told this from the platform before. I got lucky when I was, third or fourth time I was ever here. Reverend Michelle Madrano was speaking, and she was on fire, as she often is. And she just stopped cold in the middle of her talk and said, and I don't want to hear it anymore. If you're saying science of mind doesn't work and you haven't worked with a practitioner, I don't want to hear it because you're not really doing it. If you think science of mind doesn't work, get a practitioner. If you're not willing to do that, you're not willing to live at this level. And I don't want to hear it. And then she went right back into her own talk. And so little baby science of minder me went, I better get a practitioner. I wonder what that is. So I didn't even know yet. And working with a practitioner absolutely changed my life. There is zero chance I would be here now if I had not worked with practitioner Suzanne Musa for years. I want that for you. So deeply, I want that for you. And so here's how we're going to bring it together. Many of you know my husband is Buddhist, so I very often will look to Buddhist wisdom. So this is Ernest Holmes quoting Buddhist wisdom. When a mirror is covered with dust, it cannot reflect images. It's the same with all beings. If our minds are not clear of the dust of false belief, the absolute cannot reveal itself to us. So this is the invitation this week. Get out your mirror. Use your spiritual practice to clear it off. And really look, where am I in creating peace in this world? In the face of all that is, am I the stand for peace that I think I am? And how can I be it more completely? I will certainly be doing it too. And so it is. And so let's take this into some prayer. Oh, how good it is to remember that there is a power and a presence for love and peace and wholeness and joy that is right where we each are individually, because it is where everyone is. Every being, every being, every being, every being. Including the shooter. Every being. How good it is to know that there is peace even in the face of pain and fear. To know that there is love that is bigger than any concern that could stand in front of us. And so I just trust whatever is on the hearts and minds of every beloved that calls New Vision Center home or friend, that it is being met right here, right now, by that which we call the One, the Beloved, Sweet Spirit. There's always an elegant path forward. And I know that we are each finding it now. So grateful I am to know that this is the truth for each one of us, and it is good beyond good beyond good. And so it is.